welcome back. Today I am talking pattern prepping. So in front of me I've got 5 different styles of the way I have prepped patterns so that I can cut them out easier. So I'll take you through all of those and then I will show you how I do my laminating process. So the first one I've got is plastic, like tablecloth plastic. So this is the thickest one that you can get from Spotlight. It's about $30 a meter. But I used to buy a lot of the remnant pieces because I'm just using it as a template. So this was really good to start off with because it was thicker than paper. It doesn't tear either, but I do find it's a little bit movey sometimes when you're trying to trace around like the difficult parts. So sometimes that would just move a little bit. So this is how I used to originally do my pattern pieces, and it did work. It definitely works for clothing patterns as well. So I did this for like an apron, the swoon apron I have got made out of this stuff. So it does have its perks and its upsides. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is online. People actually sell acrylic templates. So this one here is the Sweet Pea by Blue Color. But I didn't buy this one. I got my husband to make it out of recycled acrylic that we found at a recycle yard. So he's cut out all the pieces for me. I have drilled the hole in the template for where the magnet goes so I can just scribble that hole. And then this piece I made sure was clear, and I've drawn the center point where I would want to center a design on here. So if I was to make this and I was going to do embroidery or something, I can mark it up and make sure that it's nice and centered. So this is a really good way. I love these because I can just cut around them with a rotary cutter so I don't have to trace and cut. But yeah, so I don't have all of mine in these because acrylic is hard to come by, but there are people online. So if you're not handy with tools, there's some shops online that will actually do the patterns up, and they have them all beautiful and they've got them laser engraved and they are amazing. One day I hope to be able to own all of my patterns like that, but for now I'll just go with what I've got. So my second one I've got is another thing that my husband does for me, and he actually cuts my templates out of MDF. So this is like a cheap kind of chipboardy fabric. You can get a really, really big piece for about $9, and that will do, depending on the pattern, between 3 and 7 patterns. So if you've got a bigger pattern like this is the Denver, the large size. So I got my husband to cut out both the lining and the outside pieces, because then I don't need to worry about this and ruling anything. I can just lay it down, trace around it, and cut it out. The downfall to the MDF is it's not thick enough to use your rotary cutter. You will cut into it, which is unfortunate. I have done that to a few pieces, so I had to get my husband to replace them for me because it drove me insane. But I do, most of my patterns get done like this now, and then I can just lay it down, trace it out, and off I go. So I do love that option. If you're not handy, or your husband's not handy and he can't do those things, there are still plenty of options. You can also go with just plastic. So this is just plastic. I think this comes from Office Works, but you can get any kind of just plastic and then trace out your pieces and cut them out. It is a great solution. You can just trace around it with a pen. If you veer onto here for any reason, it doesn't matter. It'll just wipe off or not even mark. So plastic is another really cool idea to use. The last one I'm going to talk about, and then demo, of course, is laminated pieces. So this is part of the mini NCW. So I've taken the pattern from online, I've cut it out perfectly, and then I've laminated it. Now this piece is obviously just little, it's like the width of my hand. So it could go through my laminating machine, which obviously makes it easy. But after here, I'm going to show you how I construct the bigger pieces and then laminate it for you. So I hope this will help, and stay tuned if you want to see how that's done. And if not, that is all the other information on pattern pieces I have today. Okay, so I've done half of it off camera just to be quick, but I am going to show you how I put them all together. So when I cut my pieces, I will cut some right on the line, but then the joining pieces to this, I actually leave a little bit of the extra paper. And I also cut this angle so that it's not coming straight out. So then you can just slot that behind, line it up, and you're not going to have any bits sticking out at each side. I just use a little bit of masking tape. It doesn't have to go all the way up because obviously this is not the final product. So then this piece, I have an excess here. So I've cut off the excess for here. So I can just line that up. And I forgot to leave a little bit extra, but I'll explain that in a second. So I just chop off a little piece of tape. It doesn't have to, actually that was pretty big. It doesn't have to go the whole way along. This is just kind of holding everything in place until we get to laminate it. So then this piece, as you can see, I've left the two sides and I've made sure that I've cut off all these corners. So then I can just slot them under there and it all lines up perfectly like that. And then I can just cut off some tape and then stick it down. So this needs to come out just a little bit. Stick it down there. And then, see, now this piece is actually a little bit dodgy. So another reason to use masking tape is because you can come and reline that up really well like that. So there we go. Now, this is half that I've already done. So here's the one half I did. And on the fold edge, I've cut it perfectly. And then on this one, I have left, I was supposed to leave some here, but I have left a little bit of extra paper. So again, I'm going to put the one with the extra right side up. And then I'm going to get the first one that I did and put it right sides down. And then line up the top and the bottom. So that then we've got one large piece. And then I'm just going to take a bigger piece of tape like this and stick it down the center. Again, if you miss or if it slips while you do that, it's masking tape, so it will come back up. So there is now the actual size without a fold. Another thing you can do if you want to is you can actually cut out a window here so that if you're centering a design, you can actually have it be purposefully centered in your piece. So that's another piece done. Another thing I'd like to show you is it's got this little piece in there, and the other half of this was something that I didn't need to print two of. So instead of wasting all that paper, I've just taken a scrap from one of the others. I've made sure I've left the tab on this piece, and then I'm just going to line that up with the edges like so, and I'm just going to trace that shape. So trace around what you've already cut out, making sure that we're not including this little paper tab. So then we can cut this out, and it is an exact replica of the other side. So you can save yourself like a whole piece of paper and some ink, which, you know, is handy in the long run because I go through a lot of ink. Okay, so then we just go to the flat edge and we sit that on top of our little tab piece and then sticky tape it down. So I obviously only need a really little bit of tape for this because you never want the tape to go all the way to the edge because it will distort your straight edges. So there we go. So that's another piece completely done. I also have left a piece just to show you how I cut it. So I cut all the, I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, I need to keep some here. So I'm going to cut this out at an angle and then just snip it and then come back at basically a 45-degree angle. So I'll show you there. So I've just chopped off both of them because then these aren't going to get in the way for when we're sewing. So I need to keep this top one to join it, but I also don't want it that thick. So you can just kind of hack out a little bit because it doesn't need to be a straight line there. And then we go back to precision cutting down that edge. And then when we get to here, again, I'm going to angle in to make sure that there's nothing sticking out. So now I can just slot that under there, and that's going to sit perfectly. Grab some sticky tape. You can do it in little dots if you want to. I just feel like that might take me longer. So stick that down. I also need to trim off this bottom because this bottom I don't need. And these scissors that I'm using are my zipper cutting scissors. So they cut zipper, paper, and plastic for me and nothing else. So then again, I've got the other piece that I've cut perfectly. So I'm going to have this one face up so that I can match up my edge with that fold line. Sit that on top like that. Oops, I just moved that. And then grab some sticky tape. Masking tape. I don't like using sticky tape because it sometimes leaves like a wet residue when I'm trying to iron it. So I find masking tape suits me best, but you're welcome to use whatever you want. All right, so now I'm going to set it up so we can go and see how I make them thicker. All right, so I have just bought any brand of A4 laminating sheets. This is a 100 pack. I've had them for a while, but I am getting close to finishing. So I've just grabbed 3 pieces. Now I tested this off screen just so I can show you quickly. So what you do is you open up your first laminating sheet, and I'm going to place these close to the edge because I want to get as much out of my sheet as possible. So I'm pretty close to the edge, but there is still a little bit of overhang because I don't want to not get part of it. So then I'm going to line up, there's more gap here. I don't know if you can see it because it's shiny, but I've got more of a gap so I can actually fit 2 pieces in here like this. Now, one way to do it would be to put this end and double it over, but if I put it this way, I can actually get another piece in here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that. Oh, I've also got my iron set to relatively low. I've set it to probably half the highest temperature. So I don't want it so weak that it won't do anything, but I also don't want it too hot that it's going to melt and go weird. So I've just opened up this sheet, and then I'm taking these 2 pieces and I'm lining it up close to this edge here and slotting it up as far as I can, like so. And then down the bottom here, I should hopefully be able to get this piece in here as well. So I might flip that because otherwise I'm not going to get the point in, whereas I can overlap it under these ones. So stick it up and under like that to make sure that I'm getting the most out of my sheets. So there we go. So now that is all completely covered. I'm just going to have to move the camera. Now this is just what I use as a pressing cloth. So it's just a piece of fabric. There's nothing special about it. It's cotton fabric, so it won't melt no matter what. So I'm just going to lay this over here, and I'm just going to slowly but continuously move my iron over where my laminating sheets are. So they come all the way out to here. So you don't want to stop, but you don't want to go really fast either. So you just slow and steady wins the race. And then you can check it. So once I get to there, I'm just going to pull this cloth back, and I can see that that is definitely working for me. So I'm just going to keep at that speed and that heat. If it hasn't stuck properly yet, you can either go slower or turn up your iron slightly, but don't put it on full because they just warp and then it's counterproductive. So I've got to come all the way down to here. And you also want to make sure that you don't put the iron directly on it. So I've got a little bit sticking out here, so I'm actually going to move my cloth down to make sure that I don't get anything on my iron, because then I have to clean it. All right, so let's just have a look at how we've gone. I'm just going to flip it over and do a little bit more because I can see here hasn't quite taken. But I don't have to do the whole lot, so I'm just going to come slowly down. I don't know if you could hear that, but I could hear it melting together. It pushed out any bubbles because of the way I'm doing the ironing. I'm not just setting it and then lifting it and moving it. So I'm trying to do it nice and smoothly. And if you find that these still aren't thick enough for you and you want even thicker, you can just put another layer of the laminating over the top. But that is now laminated and ready to cut out. Okay, so this is a really big piece. So I've put on 3 A4 pieces and then I've got this excess, but it also has left a gap up the top here. So I'm actually going to cut this before it's laminated. I'm still leaving a gap here just because I am. And then I'm going to take this piece and slide it over these edge pieces. So I just want to, you can lift it up a little bit. It is pretty easy to move. So I'm going to slot this here on the end like this and then fold that over. So that's got me everywhere but this little bit here. So then I'm going to cut this piece again and put it on from the other way. Because I've just got like a 2-inch bit that isn't covered, but obviously I want the whole thing laminated, or what's the point? Now it doesn't matter if it's going to overlap at all because it'll just make that particular section stronger. So I'm going to push that in most of the way, like so. And now that entire area has been done with just the A4 sheets. You could also buy A3 sheets, which would obviously mean less patchworking of the stuff. But I originally bought a laminator to just laminate sheets. But as you can tell, lots of pieces don't fit when it comes to sewing. And I don't like to have my patterns with the on the fold because I'm not very good at cutting it on the fold. That's just me. The fabric tends to move while I'm trying to cut it and I never get like a nice straight thing. Or I never center my design properly. It's always slightly off. So I like to do this, and then patterns where I want to center it, I could cut out the square in the paper before I laminate it so that the middle hole will still be laminated. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful. And as you can probably tell, I am laminating the Lynette business bag. So there will be a tutorial for this bag soon-ish. I just need to make one up first to prove that I can do it off camera, and then you guys will get the tutorial. Because most of these are super straight edges, I'm actually going to take one of my quilting rulers, and I've got 2 of these. So one is designed to do this, so it cuts all my paper and plastics and stuff, and then the other one is for fabric. But you can even just change your blade out. Keep your older blades for this purpose. So I'm just going to line my ruler up right on the edge and then just rotary cut that along there. So that gives me a nice crisp edge and it's laminated. So I'm going to do the same to the other side, but then obviously for the curves, I'm going to go back to using my scissors. So I'm just going to apply pressure to the middle of my ruler. Like so. If you did happen to put any tape over here, this will also cut that off while still maintaining a nice sharp edge. So now I'm just going to cut these curves. So I want to cut it right on the same part as before so it's the correct size. Do the same to the other edge. So then once I've got all my pieces together, once I've done this to all of my pieces, I'm going to take my hole punch, but I'm going to bring it up to my biggest hole, and then I will line them all up together and punch a hole approximately 1 inch in. I don't want it too close to the edge because then it won't work. So normally I would line them all up, punch the hole so that they can then go into my little card slot holders. Here's one. Grab this one off my other one. So this is how I keep all my pattern pieces together. So I would take this and then slip that through there and have all the pieces hanging on one hook. This pattern's really, really good. So it's got the bottom support base and everything, so I don't have to measure out smaller. But if it didn't have this, I would reprint these pieces and then chop it down and then laminate that so I've got multiple pieces.